Hey guys.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm 2 minutes late.
Hello, Julien.
Hello. So I suggest we do Alkis's style of running the process. I guess I missed the last meeting, but I'm guessing that's what you did last time. Switches. So if you've not been there, so before what I would do, it would just go around the room and say, hey, say your name, where you work at. What do you want to talk about today? And so instead, we're going to do that in parallel and be a lot more efficient. So actually, it's akin to, I don't know if you know the lean coffee way of running this kind of meeting, but basically is that everybody writes in parallel what they want to talk about, and then we go from there. So sorry, getting my windows situated. Okay, everybody's already doing this. You guys are so good. Let me share the link in the and a new file format just dropped today, so I guess we can talk about this as well. Where's the chat? Here. Oh, yeah. Everybody on top of it. So the way we're doing this, in the doc, in the notes for today, in the attendee list, you can put your name, where you work at, if you're comfortable with doing so, and what you want to talk about today, or you would want, if you have a question, if there's a question, if there's a review you need attention from people on, if you're blocked, if you want to propose something, if there's a design detail that needs to be hashed out and benefit from a sync conversation. Of course, if you're just listening in, you can do like others have been doing and just listening in. And then we'll build the agenda from that, and I'll be managing the times to make sure we don't drop things. Okay, so let me see. On my list, we have 17 attendees. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So, and it's okay, don't feel like you must disclose anything, right? It's okay if you just want to listen in and not even write your name, it's okay. I think it's better if you can put a little something so that we get to know each other a little bit better, but there's no pressure for anything, really, if you just want to listen. Yeah, if you don't have access to the doc, just use the suggesting mode, and then we'll approve the changes. I think the invitation, if you're not in the invitation, you can add yourself to the list, but I think the list doesn't automatically refresh the invitation sometimes. Okay, are we good? Anybody needs another minute? Okay. Oh, yeah. So I see, as long as I see typing, I will wait a little bit. And then okay, are we good? Let's go. Thank you all for contributing. I guess I'll start with a couple of things. Congrats, Andrew, on becoming the newest Parquet committer.
Thank you. I'll be happy to be here, and thank you all for the vote of confidence.
Thank you for your contributions. And then, okay, so what the agenda is still moving. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So what we have, and maybe I can share my screen at the same time so we look at the same thing. Okay, I have too many things open. So, okay, I haven't set up. I'm not going to share my screen because I haven't set up these browser yet. So it's going
I
to.
can share from.
Oh yeah, someone wants to share. That's good. Just so that we look at the agenda. So we have the new proposals. So I merged the PR I had made for having some place in the repo when we can give a focus on the new proposals, like if people want to add new encodings. I know this is a hot topic nowadays to have newer encodings, and we want to adopt some of those. There's a question about the file path. Maybe we start with the questions. Parquet Arrow new release needs a variant change, so there's a variant topic. There's a FlatBuff footer, and yeah, new encodings, new proposals. I would put this in the same bucket. And then Andrew, you mentioned performance update. So do we want to start? I'll start with the file path question.
That was me. Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick. So basically, I'm the author of High Parquet JavaScript with implementation of Parquet. I'm working with ML datasets like from Hugging Face. They're like 400 megabyte plus Parquet files. I would love to be able to just annotate a column, like add a label, add a quality score, like whatever, without having to rewrite the whole file. So I found this file path in the column metadata, and I kind of wanted to use it. And so I implemented a writer in High Parquet Writer, and I implemented a reader in High Parquet. Here's my problem. I cannot, with any other library, C, Arrow, any of these, I have not successfully made a single Parquet file that uses file path. So I feel really uncomfortable releasing it until I'm able to test against a single other implementation that works. But maybe that doesn't exist.
So this is the thing that initially I think there was a thinking that people could store each column in a different file, right? That's what we're talking about. Yes. So, and I think for that, I think I'm the one who put this file path field in the spec. So what happened is this was never implemented. So this was put in the metadata as a possible thing. I think we could implement it if we agree in the community that we want. I think that we should do one or the other. We should either drop this from the spec or create a path to be able to implement that, right? So yeah, I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't think anyone will actually use this field reading Parquet file, right? The Java implementation doesn't. And
I forget if the Java implementation technically does have code paths for it, but it has some restrictions where it'll say things like you can't have a native column and an external column. And I can send source code to people, but I haven't even succeeded in making one where all the columns are external.
okay.
Yeah, so I think all the columns are external was like a there's like a manifest thing that some people were using for Parquet files and that's where like some of those code paths are from. But like for individual, so like you could essentially write a footer to a standalone file, and that would act as a pointer to other files. I think. We should have a mailing discussion. I'll send out a proposal to deprecate it. Like I think managing like different columns, I think there's different opinions here, but I think it's complicated at file format level to do this appropriately. And like with the rise of table formats, I think table formats are in a better position to be tracking the columns. But
yeah, it is weird, like having to figure out how you load another file if you're not passing in like the array buffer or things like that. But yeah, it's funny actually you mentioned the table formats. I started looking at this because Iceberg didn't actually solve my problem. Despite Parquet being very column oriented, if you want to annotate like with a new column, you have to rewrite every single row.
Yeah. So I encourage you. I can try to go offline. There's a discussion where Peter Varied proposed for like Iceberg to like be able to write columns independently, and like I think there is a real use case there. I don't know how he felt about trying to push it through, but like it seems like a useful thing to have at the table.
That'd be cool if there's a link for that. Yeah. But,
yeah, Kenny, what was the use case again? You're trying to add a new column to a file?
well, like we have these huge LLM data sets, and I would rather not have to rewrite them from S3, but I want to annotate with the column. And the column itself I'm annotating is tiny. So I basically want to zip these together. And if I could use this file path, I can do that super efficiently.
So what does annotate mean in this
like
case?
Add a label or add a score, for each row, like add a number or add like a label.
So you're effectively adding a new column to the Parquet
Yes.
file. Is that what you want to do?
Yes.
I've heard people talk about if you're able to append with S3, you might not be able to, but if you can append to the object, you can basically just append the new column data and then write a whole new footer to it.
Yeah, that occurred to me, but doesn't really work with S3, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, long story short, it sounds like this is not exactly a widely supported thing.
Yeah, no.
I think we do have some Iceberg folks in this community. So, and I feel the same as Micah, that this is more like a table feature than a Parquet feature.
That makes sense to me as well. I think, yeah, so maybe Micah, you'll send an email. You said you wanted to start a thread to deprecate this and maybe make it official. Did you say there's a proposal on Iceberg to do this?
There was like some prototyping done. I don't know that rose to the level of proposal, and like I said, I don't know the commitment of the person that raising it to like push it through. I also think other people feel differently about where this belongs. So it's more of a there, but I'm trying to find the link in the Iceberg mailing list on this, and I will try to link in the doc if I find it.
Okay, so we can start a discussion on the mailing list and see what people feel about this.
To be fair, if this field is there since like a decade plus and it hasn't been used, I don't think there's a lot of arguments to make to keep it.
It could be well supported in the JavaScript client by this week.
Oh yeah, I just shared the doc in here. You can take a look.
Is the data file reader and writer? I thought that was something different though.
Not this one. I think it's this one.
That one was, I think, more API specific, but is it parallel stuff? It might cover all of it, but I will I'll find the mailing list that I was talking about. So that might be relevant also.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so next topic, unless, feel free to interrupt if you wanted to add something here. Next topic, so new encodings, the new proposal. So I merged in the first version of the new proposal process, right? So we have the doc that Micah contributed that probably needs a little bit of finalizing as well. That I pointed in, but I created basically a space in the repo where we can highlight those proposals, right? If we want to make it easier for people to contribute new encodings and for us to collaborate on that and decide what we want to add and how we make it happen across the ecosystem, right? Like this becomes not just part of the spec, but implemented in all the people who are here, right? If I see Databricks, Snowflake, other people at Google in there. And so this is there. Anybody who put new encodings, what did you want to talk about this?
I put it on and I would like to get the party started, basically. And so what I'm really looking for is finding other people who are interested in adding new encodings to help form, make a realistic proposal or two or three.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Community Over Code conference, the Apache Foundation conference, and I had a discussion with one of the Parquet contributors that is not in the meeting today, but he's come a couple of times, who was interested. Basically, their use case is they store telemetry data from appliances, and they were interested in a better floating point encoding for numeric values, right? Like this is all telemetry metrics from appliances. And so I know they are interested and they are working on a proposal. And it's all based, there are a couple of papers we talked about. So hopefully this will be coming, but of course, anybody is welcome to come in. I know there are a few papers we talked about over the past years that we think would be a good idea to implement.
How about I'll start with, oh, sorry, go ahead.
The thing that I wanted to mention was, I think probably like a month back or 2 months back, we said that we'd help out a little on evaluating a bunch of those encodings. As the time's permitting, we are trying to evaluate a bunch of those, and hopefully like in 2 weeks or a month, we'll be able to give some numbers on compression ratios and decompression speed on one of the data sets. We haven't gotten time to expand it on a bunch of them. And the data set we put in was from the doc that, Micah added, I think. And hopefully that can get the discussion started and people more interested. So it's not going to be like a final thing, but just to, get people interested and see how are the encodings doing. So it's just going to be, performance numbers, not an implementation.
Yeah, I think, and that's great to start with, right? Like there's the first phase are like, okay, we're making a case, and then we'll have some numbers. Is that the right trade-off? Are we validating or get the right thing? And then I think the goal is to reuse a bit the same momentum we had with variants, right? Like we once we coalesce and we agree, okay, this is the right thing, we figure out how we make sure we can implement it in a way that's, it somewhat becomes available concurrently at the same time in a bunch of implementation, right? And it's not something that drags along over years.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think we will definitely need some help porting it over to a bunch of other things, but it'll be really important to settle on the right metrics and the right encoding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting. I think there's a lot of pressure in the ecosystem. Like I said, I saw this morning the new file format just dropped. This is, it's probably not new, but it's kind of at least there's a new name.
Yeah.
Maybe I can start a discussion on the mailing list just to gather other people who might be interested in this so that they know what's going on. And if they're also doing something in parallel, they can chime in too.
Yeah. And I guess the proposals framework that I added is also a way to facilitate collaborations, right? Like it's kind of like we can make a thing, and it can start with someone who takes the initiative. I think for all those things, we need someone to take the initiative and be driving. Hey, we think there's a use case. What the use case for this new encoding, right? And we're not just making encoding for the sake of it, but it's just like, oh, numeric values for this and this, right? And then a bunch of people can start helping, right? Or if multiple people or companies have the same need, right, we can make it easier to collaborate and make the thing happen, right? So I think in the past people have complained that Parquet is moving slowly. It was like, this is our opportunity to prove them wrong. I'm excited for this.
Anything that has decent amount of mass or adoption moves a little slow, but okay. We definitely need to change. Yeah.
So,
the irony isn't lost on me that one of the criticisms of Parquet is that it moves slowly, so we need a new format. And now, like, there's like 3, 4, 5. They're like proliferating all over the place.
I replied to Andy, right? It is very ironic. It's just, but I mean, it's all good, right? I think it's actually those formats are creating healthy pressure for Parquet to move, right? So it's kind of like, it's good. It's lighting a fire under our butt, like in some way. And this is good. And there's many ways you influence, right, the whole ecosystem, right? So I think I'm not, but yeah, it's ironic, this kind of, it's hard to form consensus. So we have 5 new formats, 5 formats. And it's interesting. But yeah, all contributions are good, right? I think it's all pushing things in the right directions. Cool. So Andrew, you said you're going to send a message to the mailing list to keep stimulating people to contribute. Prateek, you said that in 2 weeks to 4 weeks, you'll have some numbers. You take the initiative on some things. I have pinged on the side the person I talked to at the conference. I think they'd be working on something as well, and so we can use this meeting and the mailing list to kind of coalesce and get together on the few things we want to support and make happen. I think that'd be good. Any other question on this, or we can move to the next topic? Okay. Sounds great. Thank you, Prateek, for getting this started.
Yeah, thanks.
So someone added, so Parquet Arrow new release need a variant change, like 22.
Yeah. I added this. Just kind of like, is this a community like drives the Arrow release, or is it separate?
Well, so no. So if we want to make a new Parquet Arrow release, we need to do that on the talk about this on the Arrow mailing list. And
okay.
Is there a so I mean, there's a bunch of Arrow PMC members. Actually, maybe there's only me. No, Andrew, you are Arrow PMC. I'm on the Arrow PMC. Micah, you're on the Arrow PMC. So there's some of us, right? There's definitely overlap, right?
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's a little bit. This is the C++ that we're talking about.
Yeah, the C++. Yeah.
I mean, so I think Parquet PMC people, we've been a little bit lax about, but generally, like, just Parquet C++ has always been released with Arrow since it moved there, and like there hasn't been a separate vote for Parquet C++. So
I see. Okay, so I need to reach out to Arrow basically.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. What we noticed is like without this change, actually, there still cannot be used. Actually, you still have some like issues in there. So okay, I'm gonna reach out to Arrow community.
Is there so I am not obviously not joining it, but is there a regular sync for the Arrow meeting? I think back in the day, I was running a similar meeting for Arrow when I was focusing more on it. Is there a meeting like that? No.
I think I see some meeting notes come across the mailing list every once in a while, but I haven't been attending either.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I would recommend that.
Okay. Yeah.
and the mailing list, obviously, right? It's always, sure. But yeah, the last word on making a release would be a vote on the Arrow mailing list, right?
Okay, okay, sounds good.
Okay. So we have two last things. So I would suggest we do the performance update. Maybe it will be faster, Andrew, and then we can reserve the last half hour of the meeting for the Footer V3 discussion, which I think would be a more bigger discussion, I think. So let's do that. And I think the performance update from Andrew anyway is going to inform that discussion, right?
Potentially. They could also be orthogonal too. I don't think it'll take long. I also posted on the mailing list. In the Rust Parquet implementation, we've been working on seeing how fast we can make the footer parsing without changing the footer format. So continuing to use thrift, no changes to the file format, and instead just basically use a custom thrift parser and a whole bunch of software engineering tricks to improve the parsing speed. And so we have some good numbers, I think, in summary, right off the bat with no change. Like basically everyone will just get a 2x performance improvement in the next release, like in all cases. And then depending on exactly, once we have a custom decoder, we can start doing things like selectively manage which statistics are decoded, as well as more optimize the representation in memory of the statistics and the metadata in general, so it doesn't have a bunch of like little tiny allocations, for example. And so, you know, depending on, I did some best case benchmarking, okay, how fast can you make it look? And it's like 7x faster for large columns if you play a bunch of tricks. So I think that's basically, if people want to invest the time and effort into the existing format, my conclusion is you can make it a lot faster. I don't think you could ever make it as fast theoretically as if you change the file format footer to use something other than thrift. But I think there's a lot of practical room to improve, and I'm happy to actually have like real numbers now to show. That's basically my conclusion.
Any comment, question? That sounds good to me. I think yeah, both can happen in parallel, right?
Yeah, I think those are great results. Do you have any kind of numbers on how much code one needs to write to make this possible?
Well, I'm not sure how much lines of code will translate between Rust and C++. I can highlight, like the way we did it was we effectively made macros. And so in C++, in like the Rust code, there's something that looks very similar to the thrift definition, right? With like the field IDs and stuff. And then there's basically a macro that will generate the appropriate thrift decoding code for those. So it's not as nice as just feeding thrift into a compiler and getting a bunch of code out, but it's pretty mechanical to go from the thrift definition to the structures.
So one drawback of this approach is that every time the spec changes, you need to go and change the parser. Whereas if you had some thrift definition, you would get some struct and then you have to wire it up in your end.
Right. So right now, when you change the thrift definition, you have to effectively recompile the thrift definition if you're using a thrift compiler, right? And then do something with the resulting new structs.
Yep.
And so in this case, what you would do is you'd have to find the new thrift changes and put them into your structs annotated correctly. Yeah. Which is definitely my biggest concern too. It's like, how much ongoing burden will this add? And I'm actually quite pleased. I didn't write the code, by the way, so I can say this, like, I'm actually very, very pleased with how it looks, because it's basically like a mechanical translation. You copy paste the thrift code in there and you slap a couple of macros on there and voila, now you've got Rust code. So it's pretty good.
And what about the benchmarks? When you have the benchmarks and you see how many number of columns you have and row groups, do you parse all the column offsets, all the column metadata, or is it just the point lookup case where you have one column across all the row groups?
So the benchmarks basically try, I don't know, between 100 and 100,000 columns with some different types with 20 row groups, and the benchmark effectively scans them. So you have to fetch the entire thrift payload, and then the parser runs through there and figures out where all the fields are. But then depending on what we want to do, sometimes like it doesn't copy, for example, string stats into some new allocation, right? It'll just skip that, but it did have to scan all the bytes. So if it had to fetch them, it had to scan them, but it didn't necessarily do expensive things like allocate and copy stuff around.
Okay. Do you think it would be useful to generate the same synthetic or take the generated thrift footers and feed them through the FlatBuffing and see how they fare? Because 100,000 columns, I can tell you from our stats, this is not even P999. This doesn't exist.
So the nice part about my results, I thought, was most of them are pretty, like they're basically linear with them, or they're not like the factor improvement basically is not a function of the number of columns. So
yeah, that's why I want to test it to see if this remains in FlatBuff, or if FlatBuff doesn't scale as well. So I want to.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you there's code in the repository that can generate, like it generates some Parquet files, and so you can use whatever test you'd like to run. You can run them on those files.
Yeah.
Or tell me how to do it, and I can try to help.
Cool. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. We've been writing about this for years. Like someone finally did it. It's pretty amazing. I'm pretty stoked.
Do you think we can do these tricks in the thrift parser itself? Because in the thrift like compiled parser, the one that is generated?
I think I mean, in Rust at least, you could get the factor of 2, I think, by just being fancier with what the compiler generates. The real exciting thing, I think, is that once you have your own structures and you can control the decoding more fine-grained, you can actually do things like selectively decode which statistics, and like Ed's been talking about, like basically running through it first and maybe making like an index into the places in the thrifts where different like columns start and storing that separately somehow. And so that in the future, you could actually speed up decoding even more, which would be hard to imagine if you were using some generated code.
Oh, do lazy parsing. Basically find where the offsets are, store them somewhere, and then say, okay, now I need this string. Now I'm going to pull it out.
Yeah, we're just making stuff up here. Like we didn't actually implement this, just to be clear. But one thing you could do is you could basically make an index into the thrift bytes, like, hey, here's where row group 5 starts, here's where row group 6 starts, here's where row group 7 starts. And so if you only needed statistics for that row group, right, you could immediately jump there and decode it and not have to go and scan all the other bytes. But again, that's like, we're speculating on the tickets at the moment. There's no code.
We did this in Protobuf a bit more than a decade ago. It didn't pan out. We did it in the compiler though. If you do it by hand, it might actually be.
Yeah,
it might work.
Cool. Any other question on this comment? So then we'll move on to the last topic, and the footer v3.
Cool. So I think it's too bad that Antoine is not here. I think the biggest, the controversial things were the 2 GB or 4 GB row group limitation. And I think that's the major pushback that I see, but also I feel that Andrew wants to bring the point that if we can make thrift faster, why do we want to change the footer? Or maybe we can do some of the changes in thrift and go for a faster thrift decoder and do it in place.
maybe at the high level, as I understood, the rationale for a new footer is because of the perceived, or maybe like the perception that parsing the metadata in Parquet is really slow, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's in Thrift. And so,
I mean, that's still there, right? I mean, the benchmarks. So the benchmarks in proposal are against verified and Thrift converted object. So this is kind of the worst case for FlatBuff. If, for example, you have some kind of managed table where your engine writes Parquet and then it reads it back, it will do none of those, and the parsing time is going to be exactly 0. And with Thrift, this is not achievable no matter what you do. And if you do only
you can cache the metadata outside the files, right? That's the other thing you can do, or store them as a custom index or something.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you don't do the Thrift conversion, we get another 2 to 3x improvement on top. So what we see now for the P99s, which I believe they're going to be close to the white synthetic ones that you tested, the 100 columns, 1,000 columns, we see 14x, another 2 to 3x on top. We're talking like 50x. So we are still like something like 5x off from the Thrift. I'm not saying it's relevant. I'm just pointing out where we are. So in terms of performance, like Thrift, the improvements that you guys did, which are amazing, are bringing it much closer, but there's still room there. But the biggest discussion, I feel, is this part here, the 2 to 4 gigabyte row group limitation.
Yeah, my understanding on this, I've heard people talk to me and say like, oh, maybe we should get rid of row groups altogether, because like nowadays people use S3, right? We don't have blocks like we had in HDFS or something. And on the other hand, if we say, well, row groups have a limitation, now you need to split files, right? Or, well, I guess you just create a new row group, right? So there's like a maximum size. It is always inconvenient to have like a maximum size on things, right? Like even if we can argue how much inconvenient it is, but it's always inconvenient to have like some thing that force you to do things in a different way. It creates more complexity across the board, right? So I don't know, is this a hard limitation, or can you figure out a way to avoid this? Like the whole point is, in Thrift we have var length ints, right? So yeah, we can make bigger ints, because if they're too big, well, we'll have a bit that says they're bigger. And in FlatBuff, you're choosing a smaller int because they're fixed widths, right? Because
exactly, and because compressors cannot actually compress these things, it's just too small for LZ4 or Snappy to do anything with this extra 4 bytes.
So I don't know, is there any other way we can have a logic? Because
so there is a way. I think let me pull the document up. I mean, I did the same and then I reverted it. I think it was Alan who did this change, and he also posted code. Yeah, Alan Reeve. So we could have like in every column metadata, we can have 2 tables for offsets, a 64-bit one and a 32-bit one. And if it fits in 32, you use that one. If it doesn't, you use the 64. It works, but it's kind of ugly. So that could be one option.
I don't know, define ugly, right? Is this is it the engineer looking at the code speaking, or is this what's the actual impact, right?
It's just more complex for the thing that will come out of the FlatBuff compiler. It's harder to drop it in an engine, because you need to actually go through the motion to figure out, oh, this field is stored here and not there. That's not great.
Yeah, you have 2 implementations for every operator.
Yeah, and it's similar to the complexity of statistics, which are there because they matter. They're actually the biggest thing in the footer is the statistics. And this is why the proposal has this very interesting, let's just say, representation of statistics, but this is for speed and for space.
But so there's a little bit of, so one thing we're interested in, if the file has a lot of columns, it'd be more interesting. But if the file has a lot of rows, then we grow that other numbers, right? But is it fair to assume that it's never going to have both? You can not have at the same time 100,000 columns and, I don't know, like 10, I don't know how many billion, 10 billion rows or something in the same file?
I think it's safe, right? Because the file is going to be super big. And typically, folks don't write super big files because they take time. If you have a failure, you lost a lot of work. So files tend to be not that big. At least from what we see in our fleet, a file that is bigger than a couple of 100 megs is not very typical thing to see.
Okay, a couple 100 megs is the standard.
But I'm guessing other engines are doing things maybe slightly differently.
But multi-gig is also a few gigs is still not huge, right? Like from...
Yeah, but here we're saying the row group is 2 to 4 gigs. You can stash a couple of row groups in there. It's okay. The other thing with the argument of can we remove row groups? I believe we can't, because the row group is the unit of skipping inside the file. You have the stats to skip a row group. If you make your row groups too big, then you lose skipping power. Yes, you reduce the number of stats you write in the file, but now you're skipping like 2 gigs. The probability of skipping 2 gigs is kind of low because you have a lot of data. So typically you want to shrink your row groups a bit so that you can skip, you know, slices of the file and go and decode only the things that will match your filter.
It's highly topical. We've got a paper exactly on that topic at a CITER earlier this year. Happy to send out links for people who are interested. I think it starts getting into applications of what people are going to tuck into the row groups. There are domains where the file you'd like to store in addition to whatever tabular data you normally expect, you'd effectively have a blob field, and this normally you'd actually start tucking like 15, 30-second video segments in. So this is pretty popular within AI/ML right now, and so we are seeing a lot of file formats start to really balloon out. This now starts dealing with the questions that some of the other proposed file formats, especially those that have a more directory-like structure beneath the hood, are prioritizing. And that is a design decision at that point, I would say, where it's specialization. And I think it's also worth mentioning that, for better or worse, due to the Parquet C++ writers integration with with pandas, if I remember correctly, this is something that's been documented in the GitHub repos, but effectively the default row group size for half a decade with Python exported data was set to 50 million rows instead of 50 million bytes as Java did. And so for a huge amount of Parquet files in the wild, especially things you'd find on Kaggle, the taxi data set that Micah's been pointing out actually had this bug for a while as well, where all of it's just every file is a single row group. And you're now kind of dealing with that reality that people have been working around in this space for a while, that unless you have direct control over where your data is coming from, which a lot of this didn't, the stats were, who knows? Like, I think the funniest thing I've seen was Wikipedia. The Wikipedia Kaggle data set has min-max statistics. The min-maxes are just the default string encodings, and so you get an entire Wikipedia page as your min, and another one is your max. So there's a little bit of a Wild West out there, to say the least. I can't think of any applications for that, but who knows? Maybe there's something in AI ML for it. But overall, like, I think there's a point here of, yeah, there is that row group limitation. I think Parquet has the benefit of, even though we are the slowest moving, of people have said, we're also the rock that everyone's going to be compared against, and the specialization that others show only can be demonstrated in reference to what we're doing, really, as that's the whole point of specialization in the first place. So I think, yes, it's always possible to conceive of situations where, yeah, we could need bigger row groups, etc., but does it really matter all that much? And is it really the core focus of what we want to do? And so I think that because the FlatBuff footer and all of these other advancements are tackling some of the real limitation problems that we've seen of, we have tons of columns we need to deal with. Whereas here, if it's sort of up in the air of how big row groups have to be, it's like, who knows? So I think if it really comes down to it, if this is going to be something huge that needs to be worked around, then can ship it off to the mailing list, but probably get the same consensus as we got here, as most of the mailing list people are here anyways, and we kind of all have the same background and sentiment on it. So closing out that long-winded point, there's a lot of stuff out there. What, Julian, you mentioned multiple file formats. I'll take this time to say that the published version of, if anyone saw the AnyBlocks paper that won VLDB Best Paper, where we at CMU are a little bit grumpy because we have a SIGMOD paper that does the exact same thing, except we think it's slightly better. We're doing the WASM encoding, decoding as well, built on Vortex, all that. Feel free to email me if you want links to any of these papers and so on. But in any case, there's a whole lot of ways to do files, and I think let's just stay the course with what we're doing. We have reasonable expectations for the data that we're putting in here. Micah's been working on the representative benchmark set for encodings, which I think is a nice watermark here of what we want to include and not focus on in the files. That'll be taxi data, everything else. We're not shoving in 30-second video clips in it, so I think that'll be a nice ballpark for, if we're compatible with that kind of data, we're compatible with stuff moving forward. I'll open up the floor. That was...
Wait, Martin, initially you started off saying that we need to handle everything, and you ended off with the data sets that we have. It's the FlatBuff is going to work with it. So is this okay?
I think everything, people are trying to do everything, but I don't think you can do everything, is what I'd like to take from it. Of everyone's going to focus on what they're going to focus on. And the fact that you can mostly fall back to Parquet in most cases is it's good enough.
Maybe it's me too, software engineer. I don't like corner cases. I don't like exceptions. I don't like, but we're back in the taste, kind of category, which is not the best way to make decisions, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know if we can keep talking about this if you want. I don't know if we get to a full conclusion in this meeting on this, but
I think this one would be solved by vote or something, maybe, because I can see arguments on all sides here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know where like most of the savings for N32 versus like N64 is, but like if we pulled those out into like a different structure that we just had more control over, like the compression on, rather than trying to like fit them into flat buffers, that adds another set of complexity. But like, would that potentially like be a way of solving this issue in a way that makes everybody happy?
Your suggestion is to get a struct that is all 32 offsets and the other one is 64.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, one of the things in the back of my mind is still like, there are these things that push both ways, and like really what you want is saying like, for the, like some of these things, I think you could get mileage by having like, you know, an array of 32-bit, array of 64-bit, but you could take that one step forward to say like, now I can apply like a lightweight encoding on it to like make it much smaller and still decode quicker than just doing LZ4 on it, right? Like, so effectively, like one of the early things we talked about when we're talking about V3 is trying to like model the footer as like a mini Parquet file. And like, that's probably too overblown because there's just stuff that's not worth it. But for some of the things that are taking up more size, I wonder if like they should be split out into a different data structure, or could be, and like if that is a reasonable trade-off to make in terms of complexity.
So this is a kind of akin of Antoine's suggestion to put unparsed FlatBuffs inside the footer as well, and then you can decode them on demand.
Yeah, right. That's like another. Yeah, that's like another option there as well. Like, I mean, I think all these things where like we put a little bit more of laziness directly into the format, or like compressibility, or like siphon or split things up in a different way, might it adds complexity in some ways, but it also like adds flexibility for some of these performance things that might be useful.
I mean, if you use one of those variants that Thrift has, like in most cases, it's going to be just the same number of bytes, right, or something. Like if we treat this instead of an array of fixed width ints, it's an array of bytes, right? And you have encoded integers in there. Most of the time, they can all be the same width.
I mean, with the array of bytes, though, you then, yeah, I don't know if FlatBuffer supports like fixed. It'd have to be like not outside, but like fixed width bits, right? Like if you're saying, I know that they would all be the same length, right? Like if you have really large files, you're going to start out with like a few 1-byte things, a few 2-byte things, and get to 3-byte things. So you still waste space, or like, and then you get to up to 4 bytes things. But like that could be something that solves it, but that would involve going columnar, right? Or like, yeah.
So the columnar I tried as a first experiment when I was doing the FlatBuff, and it turns out that it becomes like quite weird to look at, like to understand where the data is. You need to actually change its form so that you can print it out and understand what this thing looks like. And back then, I didn't have the idea to transform it into the Thrift object to use it in the engine, which would make it a lot easier for adoption. So maybe that's another design space, but I didn't explore it fully. Like lay out all the offsets of all the columns is one array, and then lay out all the dictionary pages offsets of the columns is another array, and just lay everything like that. In FlatBuff, though, I'm not sure this would buy as much.
Yeah, you need to plan with other things, like saying, I think, like, this is just a byte array that happens to have, like, integers at every 3 bytes, right, or every 4 bytes, and that's kind of the same. That would give you the flexibility of, like, if you actually needed something more than 4 bytes, you could have 5 bytes, and those particular files would just be larger, but they're already pretty large if you need 5 bytes to represent offsets.
Yeah, but then you are adding more code, more complexity, more things for the different languages to go and implement.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree. There's a trade-off complexity versus flexibility here.
One of the downside of the limitation here, right, is like you reach the limitation at a point in the code where it's too late to create a new file, right? Or create a new row group, right? We need some kind of fail-safe to avoid falling in the trap, right? Like if we have if the solution is we encode it differently, then we have a fallback at the time. We figured out we wrote too much data in the file, right? When you get to the footer, it's a bit late to. You need to have a way to upfront. You'll have stopped the. I guess you can, right?
No, I mean that you're keeping the footer in memory anyways, right? You're never you're recording it so you can like re-expand.
No, yeah, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yes, you know that you need to stop the row group and start a new one, right? Yeah.
So this is practically changing all writers to stop at the 2 GB byte limit for a row group.
They already have some kind of limit. Oh, I guess the limit is not a hard limit, right? So we kind of if you go over the number, then you stop, right? But you already been over the number, right? That's currently the current logic, right?
Yeah, it depends on the writer, but some writers do that.
Yeah.
So I think this one is something that we can see in a vote. If there's strong opposition, we can fall back to the solution of having 2 structs, one with 32-bit offsets, one with 64. Most files are gonna fit in the 32. It adds a bit of complexity to the format, but that's, I guess, okay if there's no other way to push it through.
Okay. Yeah. So next step. So we have 2 minutes left in the meeting. So next step, you're going to do a discussion on the mailing list for that, hinting that. So you said Antoine. So I missed the last meeting, but Antoine was.
I was not here in the last meeting, but with Antoine, we had a discussion on the mailing list about the different contention points, and this is the only one that I feel is unresolved.
Okay, it sounds like so if it ends up in my preference is we can get to some kind of consensus, but I agree we should not get blocked on this, right? Like, it's kind of not making a decision is also making a decision. So it sounds like there's more support for just having this limitation. So okay,
I'm not sure if there's more spread. Like I think we should have a discussion on the mailing list because I think this is actually a good reminder. Like we can discuss here, but like mailing list is official because not everybody can.
That's very true. Yeah.
I think it's worth starting a new thread with a link to the design document again and saying like, as far as I know, the one remaining outstanding issue is in 32 versus in 64 and
before. Yeah, thanks, Micah. But before we run out of time, are there any other blocking threads that I should open on the mailing list to discuss? Because like from my point of view, I think this is the only contentious one, but I don't know if there's anything else that, like, you all reviewed the doc.
I unfortunately haven't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could you make in your email? Could you make a quick list of the assumptions you made, right? Because there's a few other assumptions you made, right? We're going to, like in the changes, right? You made a list of changes, so kind of have a summary, like bullet points. There's this, right? So there's a row group limitation, 2 gigs or 4 gigs. There's this and this and this, and just to like poke people to go look at it and please say we need validation on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the only other contentious point is back to like Andrew's thing about how far we can push thrift. I don't know if Andrew, you have any last parting.
I don't think that's a contention point. I think that's, we're gonna do it anyway. It's gonna go faster. Everything's gonna be great. And then if we can do FlatBuffers and go through the same software engineering exercise and get another factor of 10, that seems like a win for everyone, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just we have a better baseline for the benchmark. It's anywhere. It's like it's better to support the decision of making a new footer if we have the proper speed to compare to. Otherwise, like we can get in the discussion on, oh, we could make it faster. Like now we have a real number, right? We'll have a real number, then we'll have a better argument about this.
Yeah, the other thing that I think might have been unresolved and that I have to go back through is just like, I think, Alkis, it's worth pointing out exactly all the overhead that comes into like the performance numbers, because I don't think people realize that that involved like an extra translation back to thrift footers that is an engineering decision in the short term, but that can be relaxed with if you have the proper abstractions or something like that. So that's like another thing to maybe validate there, because I think Antoine also raised some.
I think we can probably add some more fine-grained telemetry and measure the time it takes to verify the FlatBuff and add that there, so that we have another data point. And we all know that not verifying is practically zero. So
Yeah,
I can make a stronger point on that. Okay.
yeah, and that's really the delta for like, I think Perm benchmarks assume validation and like, you know, decompression validation and like translation to thrift structs, whereas like translation to thrift structs is probably non-trivial, I imagine, but I don't know off the top of my head. But
Yeah, it's not nice.
yeah, right. But like, I think that might be a point of contention, like where people don't realize it's much faster. We're just doing this thing
Okay.
to make it work. So, okay.
Cool. So we have a couple action items. Thank you, everyone. And we see you next time and see you on the mailing list. Thank you for the contributing to the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alkis. Thanks, guys.